On my own sister's wedding day, while everyone waited for the bride to enter the church, I set up the projector at the reception. They didn't know it, but the video I was about to show wasn't a tribute. It was proof of the betrayal that was happening under my own roof. I lifted him out of poverty and made him a respected man, but he repaid me by leaving me for my own sister. Little did they know the revenge I'd been planning for months. You can't imagine the satisfaction I felt when I saw the desperation in their eyes in front of all the guests. But to understand this story, I need to go back to the beginning. Good evening to everyone watching. My name is Lucia, and today I am 72 years old. But the story I'm going to tell happened exactly 10 years ago, back in 2015, when I was just a 62-year-old woman living peacefully in Bloomington, in the interior of Indiana. At that time, I considered myself a fulfilled woman, married for 15 years to Ricardo, a man I helped build a solid career. I was always the older sister, the one who takes care of everyone, who solves the family's problems, and it was exactly this protective nature of mine that almost destroyed me. You know, sometimes we are so kind that we forget to protect ourselves. But this story taught me that too much kindness can be dangerous, especially when you shelter a snake in its own nest.
Before I begin to tell you the details of this story that changed my life forever, I ask that you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I would love to know in the comments where you are listening to me from. And most importantly, I want to know if you have ever been through something similar. Because, unfortunately, family betrayal is more common than we think. And maybe my story will help you recognize the signs before it's too late.
At that time, my life was exactly as I had always dreamed it would be. I was married to Ricardo, a man I truly believed was my true love. We met when he was still a simple boy, working as an administrative assistant in a small company. I've always been an independent woman. I worked as an accountant at a medium-sized company, and a good salary, and owned my own home. When I met Ricardo, he was struggling. His family was very humble, and he could barely afford the rent for a small room in the city centre. But I saw potential in him. He was smart, dedicated, and just needed an opportunity. So I helped him. I paid for a technical course in business administration for him, then a college education. I used my connections to get him a better position. Within a few years, he was earning almost the same as me. We got married in a simple ceremony, but full of love, or at least I thought it was love. We built a beautiful life together. We had a comfortable home, a nice car, and we went on vacation. I was professionally fulfilled, and it seemed I was fulfilled in love too. But what made me most proud was the way I took care of my family, especially my younger sister Jessica. She was 12 years younger than me, and when our parents died in an accident when I was 32, she came to live with me. She was only 20 years old, in her second year of college, studying education. I raised her as if she were my own daughter. I paid for her college tuition, gave her clothes, food, and affection. When she graduated, I helped her get a job at a private school. She was beautiful, intelligent, and caring. Everyone praised how educated and successful she had become. After she graduated, she lived with me for another 2 years until she was able to settle down. When she finally left home to live on her own, I felt empty, but also immensely proud. I thought, I've fulfilled my mission as a big sister. She's ready for life. During the first few years of my marriage to Ricardo, Jessica came to our house almost every weekend. She adored Ricardo, and he seemed to love her very much too. It made me happy to see how close my family was. Ricardo always said he felt lucky to have such a special sister-in-law. How naive I was. How did I not realize that those constant compliments, that excessive attention, were not from brother-in-law to sister-in-law? How did I not see that I was creating a dangerous situation? Everything started to change in March 2015. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a rainy Friday when Jessica showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and her eyes red from crying so much. "Lucia, I broke up with Marcelo. I have nowhere else to stay. Can you help me?" She had been dating this guy for almost 2 years, and I thought they were going to get married. Of course I opened my home to her. How could I deny my little sister help? She was devastated, saying she found out her boyfriend was seeing someone else. I welcomed her with open arms, offering her a roof over my head and my shoulder to cry on. Little did I know I was harbouring a snake in my own nest, but at that moment I only saw a young woman of 28 suffering for love, needing the protection of her older sister. I set up the guest room for her and told her she could stay as long as she needed. Ricardo was also very welcoming. He came home that night, saw Jessica crying in the living room, and said, "Don't worry, Jessica, this is your home. You'll get through this." In the early days, I thought I was doing the right thing. Jessica helped me with the housework, cooked, and kept me company. We talked for hours about the relationship that had ended. She seemed so vulnerable, so grateful for the welcome. But little by little, I began to notice some changes in our household routine. Ricardo, who always arrived promptly at 6 p.m, started arriving later. First it was 15 minutes, then half an hour, then an hour. "Honey, I've got some extra work coming up at the office. I need to stay longer to take care of some urgent matters." That was always the excuse. I believed it, of course. Ricardo was always a hard-working, dedicated man, and indeed, at that time, his company was going through a growth phase. It made sense that he needed to work more. But what really caught my attention was the way he came home. He was always in a good mood, cheerful, sometimes even humming. For a man who was supposedly stressed with extra work, he seemed very cheerful. And there was something else that bothered me, but at the time I didn't know how to interpret it. Jessica was different too. She, who had arrived depressed and tearful, quickly became a more cheerful, more vain person. She started dressing up more, wearing nicer clothes, putting on makeup, even to stay at home. When I mentioned it, she would say, "Oh, Lucia, you always taught me that women have to value themselves. I'm trying to overcome depression by taking care of myself." And I, silly, thought it was beautiful to see my sister recovering her self-esteem. If I had known she was getting ready to seduce my own husband. For the first 2 months, I truly believe I was experiencing a period of family harmony. Jessica seemed to be recovering from her heartbreak, Ricardo continued to be an attentive husband, and I felt fulfilled by helping my sister. Our routine had adapted perfectly. I would leave for work at 7 a.m, Jessica would leave at 7:30 for the school where she taught, and Ricardo would leave at 8 a.m. for the office. I would arrive first around 6:15 a.m. and start preparing dinner. But it was precisely in this routine that the first signs began to appear that something wasn't right. Little things that at the time I justified or ignored. For example, when I came home I would sometimes find the house smelling different. It wasn't bad, it was a feminine perfume, but stronger than what Jessica usually wore. When I asked, she would say that a co-worker had come to lunch. Or else, I noticed that sometimes there was too much food left over. I'd make enough for 3 people, but it seemed like only one person had eaten lunch. When I asked, Jessica would say she wasn't hungry, that she was on a diet. But what caught my attention most was the excessive complicity between her and Ricardo. They developed an intimacy that, at the time, I interpreted as familial affection, but which today I realise was much more than that. They had inside jokes, the kind that, when they told them in front of me, I didn't understand the joke. They had long conversations in the kitchen after I went to bed. I was even happy, thinking, I'm glad my husband is being a big brother to Jessica. But when I went downstairs to get a drink of water or go to the bathroom and passed by the kitchen, they would stop talking abruptly. They would change the subject in front of me. They would start talking about work, about the weather, about any trivial thing. You know that feeling when people are talking about you, but you can't prove it? That's exactly what I felt. But I blamed myself, thinking I was being paranoid, jealous. I thought, Lucia, you're being a bad sister. You're suspicious of Jessica out of jealousy. She's going through a hard time, and instead of supporting her, you're making up problems. I forced myself to ignore those feelings. But our unconscious is more intelligent than our reason. It was picking up signals that my conscious mind refused to accept, and these signals were getting stronger and stronger. The first big warning sign happened in May 2015. It was a Saturday morning, and I was organising the dresser drawer in our bedroom when I found a crumpled receipt in Ricardo's pants pocket. It was a receipt from a jewellery store downtown, a gold necklace with a heart pendant worth 800 reais. It caught my attention because Ricardo had never given me a necklace like that. Our wedding anniversary had been 2 months before, and he'd given me a perfume. I thought, maybe he's saving it to give me for my birthday. My birthday was in July, so it made sense. I kept the receipt and didn't say anything, thinking it would be a surprise. But 3 days later, on Tuesday, when I was preparing breakfast, I saw something that made me very uncomfortable. Jessica came down to have breakfast wearing exactly the necklace that was described on the receipt. It was a delicate gold necklace with a heart pendant that had a small stone in the centre, exactly as described in the paper I had found. I was in shock for a few seconds, but I managed to hide it. I made a casual comment. "What a beautiful necklace, Jessica. Where did you get it?" She replied without hesitation, "Oh, I bought it at a little shop near the school. It was on sale. I got it with my savings." But I knew that necklace cost 800 reais, and Jessica only earned 1,200 reais a month. How could she have 800 reais in savings? At that moment, a pang of doubt struck me like a lightning bolt. Could it be that... No, I forced myself not to think about it, but the seed of distrust had been planted. I spent the rest of the day trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe there were 2 identical necklaces. Maybe the receipt was old, from some other purchase. I clung to any possibility that wasn't the most obvious. But that night, when Ricardo got home, I decided to try it out. I commented on Jessica's necklace. "Honey, did you see what a beautiful necklace Jessica bought? What a vain woman." He looked at the necklace, and I swore I saw a glint in his eye, a small smile, like a smile of pride. He said, "Oh yes, it looks nice on her. She has good taste," and quickly changed the subject. That night I could hardly sleep. I kept looking at Ricardo, trying to decipher if I was imagining things or if something was really wrong. He slept peacefully, as if nothing had happened. In the following days, I began to pay more attention to details that had previously gone unnoticed. The different scent in the house, the conversations that stopped when I arrived, Ricardo's excessive good humour, Jessica's transformation, who was becoming more beautiful and confident every day. That was when my friend Claudia, who was a neighbour and had known me for years, gave me the warning that I was so afraid to hear, but that deep down I was already waiting for. She called me at the gate one morning and said, "Lucia, I didn't want to tell you this, but as your friend, I need to warn you. Yesterday, I saw Ricardo coming home at 2 p.m. when you were at work. He came in with Jessica and they were very close. Be careful. The looks between them are not those of in-laws." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I tried to defend myself. "Claudia, you must be mistaken. Maybe he left work early to take care of something at home." But she shook her head and said, "Lucia, I've known you for 15 years. I'm only warning you because I consider you a sister." That conversation changed everything. The seed of doubt that had been planted began to grow uncontrollably. I needed to know the truth, even if it meant discovering the worst betrayal of my life. After talking to Claudia, I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. I decided that whatever the cost, I needed to find out the truth, but I wasn't going to confront anyone without being absolutely sure. I started to pay more attention to everything, the schedules, the excuses, the behaviours, and most importantly, I started paying attention to Ricardo's cell phone. He was always a reserved person with his phone, but never paranoid. He left his phone anywhere, never hid the password from me. But in the last few weeks he was different. He took his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. One night, when he was in the shower, his phone rang repeatedly. Messages were coming in. I looked, and on the lock screen a preview appeared. "My love, I can't wait to..." And the sender's name was J. Work. J. Work? Ricardo never had a co-worker who started with J. I knew all his co-workers' names. My heart raced. Could it be possible that J was Jessica? That night I pretended to be asleep, but I kept watching. When Ricardo picked up his phone, I saw him smile at the screen and type something quickly. Then he turned off the screen and put the phone away in the nightstand drawer, something he never did. The next day, which was a Friday, I decided I was going to find out everything. I pretended to go to work as normal, but I came home at lunchtime. I was determined to find this second cell phone I suspected he had, or some other piece of evidence. When I got home, the house was empty. Jessica was at school, Ricardo was at work, or at least that's what I thought. I started searching the whole house. I looked in the drawers, the closets, under the bed, and it was when I opened the glove compartment of Ricardo's car that I found it. A cell phone I had never seen before. A simple device, one of those prepaid ones, hidden inside a brown envelope. My hands were shaking when I turned on the device. There was no password, and what I saw inside destroyed my world in seconds. There were hundreds of messages between Ricardo and Jessica, love messages, intimate photos, affectionate audios. They weren't messages from a few weeks ago, they were messages from months ago. Since April, just a few days after she came to live with us. "My love, I can't wait for Lucia to leave for work so I can be in your arms. You're the man of my life. I can't stand pretending we're just brothers-in-law anymore. This afternoon was perfect. You make me so happy." But the worst part wasn't the love messages. The worst part was finding out they were planning something much bigger. I read a conversation where Jessica told Ricardo that she had met an older man at a school party. She said, "Ricardinho, I met a man who's perfect for our plans. He's 55, a widower, and the owner of a transportation company. He's interested in me, and I'm going to make him fall madly in love." And Ricardo replied, "That's great, my love. When you marry him and secure the money, we can continue our relationship. You take his inheritance, I'll divorce Lucia, and we'll live happily ever after." Can you imagine what I felt in that moment? It wasn't just betrayal, it was an elaborate, calculating plan to completely destroy me. Not only were they betraying me, they were planning to ruin an innocent man's life. I read that the man's name was Carlos, that he had already asked Jessica to be his girlfriend, and that she was playing the charm to get him to propose marriage straight away. They laughed at his declarations of love, mocked his naivety. I sat there in the car reading those messages for over an hour. I discovered that they met at our house every afternoon when I was at work. I discovered that my own bed was used for their cheating. But the message that shocked me the most was one Jessica sent the week before. "Honey, Carlos is going to propose to me next weekend. I'm so happy, not because of the proposal, but because our plan is working. Soon we'll be rich and free." At that moment, something inside me died. But at the same time, something much stronger was born. I would no longer be the naive, kind Lucia that everyone used. I would be the Lucia they would learn to respect. I went back to work that day as if nothing had happened, but inside I was a completely different person. The Lucia who had left home that morning was not the same one who came back. In that moment, sitting in the car, reading those horrible messages, something inside me broke. But it didn't break with sadness. It broke with anger. The naive, silly Lucia, who always took care of everyone, gave way to a woman who would no longer be made a fool of. The tears dried quickly. In their place was born a coldness I didn't know existed within me. For the first time in my life, I felt what the desire for revenge was. And it wasn't a small, fleeting desire. It was a visceral need to do justice. Do you know what it's like to discover that the two people you love most in the world are conspiring against you? That your kindness is being used as a tool for your own destruction? I considered several options. I could confront them both that very day. I could kick Jessica out of the house. I could tell Carlos everything. But all of these options seemed too small for the scale of the betrayal. That's when I had the idea. If Jessica wanted to marry Carlos so badly, if she was using this marriage as part of a plan to destroy me, then her own marriage would be the stage for my revenge. I wouldn't make a private scandal. My revenge would be public, devastating, unforgettable. They would regret having underestimated Lucia. That night, when I got home, I acted like an actress, playing my own role. I greeted Ricardo with a kiss on the cheek, asked him about his day. I talked to Jessica about school, about the students, but inside I watched every gesture, every word, every look between them. Now that I knew the truth, everything became obvious. The knowing smiles, the hands that touched by chance, the glances that lasted longer than usual. And the most amazing thing, now that I was no longer blinded by love and trust, I saw what terrible actors they were. How could they have fooled me for so long? But I would have been a much better actress. I would have played the naive Lucia for a few more months, just long enough to plan the perfect revenge. They had no idea what was coming. In the days that followed, I transformed into the best actress in the world. I continued to be the caring, helpful Lucia I had always been. But now I had a goal: to uncover every detail of their plan and use that information against them. 2 weeks after my discovery, Jessica came home beaming. "Lucia, you won't believe it. Carlos asked me to marry him." She showed me a beautiful, expensive ring, and I, playing my part, screamed with joy, hugged her, and asked her all the details. "How wonderful, my little sister. I always knew you would find a good man." And inside I thought, poor Carlos. He has no idea what's coming. Jessica told me the wedding would be in 3 months, in September, a big ceremony in a beautiful church with a reception in an elegant hall. Carlos wanted to make her a dream wedding. What a passionate and generous man. That's when I had the perfect idea. I offered to help with the organization. "Jessica, let me take care of a few things for you. I want your wedding to be perfect." She was touched by my generosity. I specifically offered to take care of the audiovisual part of the party. "Let me hire the DJ and take care of the decorations. I want to make a surprise tribute for you." Jessica hugged me, crying, saying that I was the best sister in the world. If she only knew what kind of tribute I was planning. For the next 3 months, I dedicated myself to 2 side projects. The first was helping with the wedding preparations, being the caring and helpful sister-in-law. The second was collecting as much evidence as possible of the betrayal. I photographed all the messages on the secret cell phone. I recorded audio of the 2 of them talking when they thought I wasn't home. I collected receipts, proof of payment, everything that proved their relationship. But the most devastating evidence I got one afternoon in July. I pretended I had gone out shopping, but I sneaked back home. They were in the living room, on my furniture, on my sofa, and I filmed everything through the window. Meanwhile, I hired the best DJ in town for the party. I paid a high price, but explained it was for a very special occasion. I also hired a professional movie screen to project photos of the bride during the party. I spent weeks editing a video. I selected the worst messages, the most compromising photos, the most explicit audio. I created a 10-minute presentation that told the whole story of the betrayal, the plan against Carlos, everything. But my masterstroke was discovering that they were planning to meet on the morning of the wedding itself. Jessica had texted Ricardo, "My love, on the morning of my wedding, I want to say goodbye to you before I play the love-struck bride. Meet us at our special place." Their special place was a motel on the edge of town, and I decided that would be the grand finale of my video. I would follow them, film them, and show all the guests what the bride did on the morning of her wedding. During those 3 months, I played the role of my life. I attended the bridal shower, helped choose the dress, and always greeted Carlos with a smile. He was truly a good, hard-working, passionate man. Sometimes I felt bad for him, but I knew I was doing him a favor. It was better for him to find out the truth before the wedding than after, when he had already divided assets with her. With a week to go before the wedding, I had everything ready, the video edited, the equipment hired, the detailed plan. Jessica and Ricardo had no idea what was in store for them. You can't imagine the anxiety I felt. It wasn't nervousness, it was anticipation. I could barely sleep thinking about the moment when I would finally get justice. The wedding day arrived. It was a beautiful Saturday in September. Blue sky, radiant sun. Ironically, a perfect day for a ceremony that would be forever remembered, but for all the wrong reasons. Jessica was beautiful in her white dress. Carlos was radiant, proud of his bride. The guests, about 200 people, were all elegant and excited. The church was decorated with white and gold flowers. But I knew that before going to the church, Jessica and Ricardo had a date. At 8 a.m., while everyone thought the bride was getting ready, she went to the motel to say goodbye to her lover. I followed them. With a discreet camera, I filmed them entering the motel together. I filmed the passionate kiss at the bedroom door. I filmed them leaving 2 hours later, looking like they had just made love. Those images would be the icing on the cake of my revenge. The religious ceremony was beautiful. Jessica played the loving bride perfectly. Carlos was so emotional, he cried when she entered the church. I was in the front row, smiling, applauding, and greeting everyone. But when the priest asked if anyone objected to the wedding, I had to control myself from raising my hand. My revenge would have been much more impactful at the party. We arrived at the hall at 7 p.m. The atmosphere was stunning. The decor was impeccable, the food was wonderful, and the music was perfect. The guests were all excited and happy. Carlos was beside himself with pride. I had arranged with the DJ that my tribute would be performed at 9 p.m. after dinner, during congratulations. It would be the perfect moment, everyone fed, relaxed, paying attention. At 8:30 p.m. I approached the DJ and said, "Get ready for our surprise. I'll let everyone know there's a special tribute for the bride and groom." My heart was racing, but not from fear. It was from anticipation to see their reactions. At 9 p.m. sharp, I took the microphone. The entire room fell silent. "Good evening, everyone. I would like to pay a very special tribute to my sister Jessica and Carlos. Jessica, you are a very special person in my life. I raised you, educated you, and always protected you. And today, on your wedding day, I want to show everyone who you really are." I signaled to the DJ, "This tribute is about the loves of our lives, especially the secret loves," and then the screen lit up. The first image that appeared was a picture of Jessica and Ricardo kissing in my kitchen. The entire room went deathly silent. You could hear a fly fly. Jessica turned as pale as the dress she was wearing. Ricardo tried to hide behind a column. Carlos stared at the screen without understanding. The guests began to murmur. The guests' murmurs turned into screams of shock. Some people began to rise from their tables. Carlos continued to stare at the screen, now with a look of horror on his face. But the final bombshell was the morning video. The images of Jessica and Ricardo entering the motel, kissing, leaving, hand in hand, with the date and timestamp, Saturday, September 12, 2015, 8:30 a.m. The room exploded. Carlos stood up from the head table and shouted, "What the hell is this, Jessica?" She tried to speak but couldn't. She was in shock, shaking, crying. Ricardo tried to run away, but Carlos's family members held him back. Someone shouted, "What a disgrace!" Another shouted, "How shameful!" The priest who was at the party was horrified. I continued into the microphone, my voice firm. "Dear guests, you have just watched a true story. The story of how my sister and my husband planned to betray me, use me, and on top of that deceive this good man Carlos. Jessica doesn't love you, Carlos. She just wanted your money. The plan was to get married, wait a while, and then run away with my husband, taking her inheritance. But I found out everything and I decided you deserved to know the truth." Carlos took the ring off his finger and threw it on the floor. "Jessica, you are a despicable person. Get out of my sight." He left the room, followed by his entire family. Jessica fell to the ground, crying uncontrollably. Ricardo tried to approach me, but I looked at him with such contempt that he backed away. "Don't you dare come near me, you worm." The party was over in 20 minutes. The guests left in horrified chatter. The whole family was divided between those who supported me and those who thought I had overreacted. But I didn't care what anyone thought. I had served justice. They had been exposed publicly in front of everyone. The humiliation was complete. You can't imagine the satisfaction I felt that night. It wasn't joy. It was a feeling of mission accomplished. I had protected an innocent man and given them exactly what they deserved. After that night, my life changed completely. The following Sunday, I woke up for the first time in months feeling free. There were no more secrets. No more lies, no more facades to maintain. Jessica left home that same Saturday after the party. She grabbed her things and left without saying a word. She never set foot in my house again. Ricardo tried to talk to me on Sunday, but I just said, "You have until Tuesday to get your things out of here." On Monday, I went to the law firm and filed for divorce. I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted him out of my life. The house was mine, bought before the marriage. He had no right to anything. The consequences for them were devastating, but deserved. Ricardo lost his job that same week. The story spread throughout the city, and his boss, a very Catholic man, fired him, saying he didn't want adulterers representing the company. Jessica lost her job at the school 2 months later. The students' parents petitioned for her dismissal, claiming they didn't want someone of dubious morals educating their children. I heard they tried to be together for a while, but the relationship didn't last. When you build something based on lies and betrayal, there's no solid foundation to stand on. They broke up 6 months later. Ricardo left the city. I heard he tried to make a living in Sao Paulo, but as far as I know, he never managed to get back on his feet professionally. The reputation of a traitor followed him. Jessica also moved to the interior of Minas Gerais. Carlos, poor guy, was shaken for months, But he was a strong man, and in time he understood that I had done him a favour. He came to me a few months later to thank me. "Lucia, thank you for saving me from a con artist. You spared me from a marriage that would have been my destruction." In fact, Carlos became a great friend. He met a wonderful woman 2 years later, a widow his age, and married again, this time to someone who truly loved him. And me? I rediscovered who I was. For the first time in years, I had no one to care for, no one to protect, just myself, and that was liberating. I sold the house where so many bad things had happened. With the money from the sale, I fulfilled a long-held dream. I travelled the world. I went to Europe, visited Asia, and spent 3 months in South Africa. They were the best years of my life. I met incredible people, different cultures, learned languages. I discovered that I was a much stronger and more independent woman than I imagined. Today, at 68, I live in a coastal city, in a simple but comfortable house. I have a group. Sometimes I'm asked if I regret the way I took revenge, if it wasn't too cruel, too public. And I always answer, they had months to tell me the truth. They chose lies, betrayal, humiliation. I just repaid them in kind. The betrayal that almost destroyed me actually freed me. It freed me from fake people, from a marriage without true love, from a life based on appearances. Today, I know that was the best thing that could have happened to me. And what a wonderful chapter this has been. Free, independent, surrounded by people who truly love and respect me. It was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of pain, because it brought me here. I hope my story touched you in some way. I know it was long, but I needed to tell you all the details so you could understand the extent of the betrayal and why I acted the way I did. If you are experiencing betrayal, whether marital or family, remember, you deserve respect. Don't accept being deceived, humiliated, or used. Have the courage to do what is right, even if it is difficult. But also remember, revenge must be proportionate to the offence. I did nothing illegal. I didn't hurt anyone physically. I simply revealed the truth. Sometimes the truth is the best revenge. Thank you for listening to me patiently. If you like my story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave your opinions, experiences, and questions in the comments. I really enjoy reading each comment, and when possible, I respond personally. You are very important to me. May God bless you all. May you always have the courage to seek the truth and the strength to start over when necessary. Good night to all, and until the next video.